Hello and welcome to WJ Live, powered by The Western Journal. My name is Joey Chester, assignment editor at The Western Journal. Today, I'm joined by Joe Setyen, deputy managing editor for The Western Journal, and Brian Chai, also deputy managing editor at The Western Journal. We have a very exciting show for you today. We're going to talk about Joe Biden being under federal investigation. We're going to be talking about gun control calls in the wake of the horrific Colorado shooting. And we're also going to be talking about some Asian racism claims, I believe.
Nailed that
one. We are so excited you are joining us. Before we get started, I want to mention our very generous sponsor, Patriot Depot. I want to thank them for sponsoring today's episode. You're going to want to check out patriotdepot.com, where you can find supplies for the conservative revolution. If you use the code WJLive, you can get 20% off the entire website this week only at patriotdepot.com. Thank you so much, Patriot Depot, for sponsoring this episode of WJ Live. All right, on to our first topic. Joe Biden is currently under investigation.
Uh-oh.
Yes. This is good news for Republicans. This is good news for the border crisis if it turns out that Joe Biden broke the law. The thing that's really amazing about this investigation is he's being investigated for the same thing that Democrats used for the basis of Trump's first impeachment. If you remember, there was the famous phone call with the president of Ukraine, where Trump said, I'll withhold funds if you don't investigate Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. And Trump did temporarily withhold funds. And the Government Accountability Office ruled that Trump could not withhold funds that had been appropriated by Congress. Now, fast forward to 2021, Joe Biden has withheld funds to stop the construction of the border wall as one of his first acts as president. And Republicans have alleged that Biden is breaking the law, like the Government Accountability Office said Trump did by withholding funds to the Ukraine. So it looks like if the Government Accountability Office rules against Biden, Biden broke the law in withholding funds for the border wall, which is a pretty spectacular place to find ourselves in. I mean, it's good news for Republicans. Yeah. It's great ammo to have. And I mean, theoretically, Republicans could use it to try to impeach Biden if they wanted to pull the same card the Democrats pulled on Trump. Do you guys think that Biden broke the law here by doing what he did, canceling construction?
I mean, that's tough to say, just from like a purely legal standpoint. Yeah. From what I've read and gathered and looked into, it does seem remarkably similar to the same conundrum Trump found himself in. But yeah, that is a tricky one because it does feel as if Joe Biden will always have will never face the same type of scrutiny that Trump did.
Absolutely.
So that does beg the question, just because Biden made the same type of mistake as Trump, will that lead to something similar, like Trump's impeachment and stuff like that? I don't know if that'll be the case, just because, like I said, Biden will never face the same scrutiny Trump did.
Right.
Yes, I think Biden did break the law. I don't know what will come of it.
Yeah, I think something that's really interesting to note here is that Trump's suspension of the funds was temporary until an action was done. Biden is actually going for a permanent suspension of the funds to stop border wall construction. So it's actually, from what I can tell, significantly worse than what Trump did.
Let me ask you a question, Joey. Just because I think a lot of this legalese can be confusing to me particularly, but what are the funds, Joe Biden stopped construction of the border wall funds, and that's the issue of this matter, having looked a little bit at the GAO report, is that Congress, they say, the Republicans allege Congress appropriated specific funds for border wall construction, and Biden is not using those funds for what Congress appropriated them for. So what are those funds going toward?
So that's the thing. So it sounds like Biden is saying, okay, well, maybe we'll use them for enhanced fencing or stuff like that. But the thing is it was specifically appropriated for the wall.
Right.
So even if Biden wants to use that money for, say, increased technology at the border or fixing, patching these, little baby fences they have at the border, that still doesn't qualify for what the funds were appropriated for in the first place.
Yeah, and I think it's a tough one. I can't say whether it's illegal or not because I'm not a lawyer, and I just again I'm not qualified probably to make that judgment. I do think that what this kind of says about kind of the way that Congress appropriates money is I tend to think that when Congress passes something, they have millions and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that they pass, and there's wiggle room, right?
Yeah.
And I wish there wasn't that wiggle room. I think that Congress has the power of the purse. They ought to appropriate things for specific reasons, and it sounds sort of like they may have done so, but Biden may have found like a loophole. Right. I think presidents. The point I'm trying to make is that I think presidents in general probably have a bit too much power when it comes to spending money that Congress has appropriated.
Yeah.
So, this should remember these things are Congress's jobs. I think the power of the presidency is a lot of that power is actually what ought to be Congress. Now I have to, look at it and see, did he break the law in this specific instance? I don't know.
Sure.
I do know that it's up to Congress. It's not up to, Joe Biden. I also know that, when Trump was president, it was he had a heck of a time trying to get the wall built. Yeah. And I remember, I think the kind of the compromise they finally reached was like, we'll give you some money for something kind of resembling a wall in return for like a deal to avert, to reopen the government, I think. But I think Congress needs to do a better job of, making that stuff much more specific so that there aren't these loopholes that Biden can kind of go around.
I think you hit an excellent point about Biden's presidency overall. His use of executive power has been extensive since he got into office. I mean, this was one of his first orders. And you're right. I mean, it's a tough issue. But I think the glaring thing in this one is that they used this same issue to impeach the president of the United States. And this, from the surface, this is without us being legal experts, this looks so much worse than the basis to impeach Trump.
Well, I think I do think part of the rationale for impeaching Trump, and I'm not saying he should have been impeached or not, but I think some of the rationale there was that he was making the political he was asking for a political thing, right? Investigate the Bidens. And here, Biden is just saying, we cut off construction of the border wall, but Trump was saying, we won't give you your money unless you do this thing that I guess hypothetically could benefit him politically.
Well, that's true. It's important to note, though, in what Chris Golden, our great columnist, wrote in this article.
The great Chris.
The great Chris Golden. The Government Accountability Office, in their report, the Democrats used for the basis of impeachment, partially, they included it in their case.
Yes.
They don't actually mention Hunter Biden or anything in that report. All they mention is the withholding of funds temporarily.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to know.
No, it is. It is.
So, Brian, do you think this gives Republicans some fuel going into 2022, 2024? How can we take this investigation and use it for political capital?
I think if conservatives and Republicans do want to take this and gain some political capital, as you said, I think I don't know if the most fruitful path will be going for impeachment. Because obviously Biden's not getting impeached over this.
Right.
That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I think that Republicans and conservatives, I think what they can glean from all of this is almost sort of a, and this is going to be a little outside the box, but I think it's less about the specific incident itself, but looking at Biden's almost singular vision to dismantle all things Trump.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And even in this story, like that's actually my first reaction when I saw this story was sort of like, oh man, like Biden is so obsessed with just removing all things Trump, like he will make a potentially illegal mistake in doing so. I think to really help us in 2022 and 2024 and beyond, it does. I think the best way to frame it would be saying like, hey, this is this is what the Democrats want as president. He is trying to dismantle everything that you loved about the Trump administration,
Right.
and sort of using that, not entirely dissimilar from how, the only common platform Democrats really had going into this election was we hate Trump.
Yeah.
I'm not saying conservatives need to rally around we hate Biden, but this kind of stuff certainly helps with sort of finding common ground because, conservatives can hold varying opinions on certain issues. This does feel like an issue that can rally.
It also seems like liberals did a pretty good job in the. Wait for me to finish the sentence first. Liberals, did a good job rallying around the "we will take you back to the Obama years" in the 2020 election.
Oh yeah,
and a lot of that was because Trump had undone what Obama did.
Yep.
So this stuff happens, right? Every 4 years, whenever a new president of a different party takes office, that president reverses what the last president does.
Yep.
Bush did it to Clinton. Bush did it to Clinton. Obama did it to Bush. Trump did it to Obama, and now Biden is doing it to Trump. And it is a rallying cry because it worked for the Democrats in 2020. They won because they basically said, we'll sell you Obama again, because Trump undid a lot of Obama stuff, and now you'll get him back because you liked Obama. So here's, the next best thing, his vice president. And I think Republicans can probably do that as a rallying cry. You liked Trump, but Biden got rid of all Trump's stuff. Mm-hmm. You should not vote for Biden because he got rid of all the stuff you liked. Yeah. And again, that's kind of what you said, Brian, but it's something that comes back it's like a cycle.
And you're 100% right. It is very cyclical, which kind of flew over my head for a second there. But I think when it comes to 2024 specifically, it'll be very interesting to see because that strategy that you just described, Joe, almost lends itself to another Trump run in 2024.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I personally have some mixed feelings on another Trump run in 2024.
Yeah.
But it does feel like that train of thought, that strategy is like a direct path for Trump to run again in 2024. Because it's even better than, hey, look, you can get Obama light with Biden. It's, hey, you can get Trump again. It's the real deal. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how this goes. I mean, obviously, we're still a solid year and a half removed from midterms, so there's still plenty of time for strategies and narratives to shift.
Yeah.
But I think the broader issue of Biden, stuff like this, he can't handle too many more of these types of controversies.
Yeah, I think the narrative to be able to say, Joe Biden broke the law just for the sake of being, I'm not Trump.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of destroying what Trump built. It's pretty stunning.
Yeah.
And speaking about overreach from Joe Biden and the Democrats, we all know about the horrific Colorado shooting that was just yesterday. And we're still learning all the facts from that case. And it's important to gather all those facts. But Democrats, in their usual political fashion, have jumped to pushing for radical gun control,
of course.
Potentially unconstitutional gun control. Joe, would you like to tell us some more about that?
So, as you said, Joey, very tragic thing happened on, I believe it was,
So yesterday?
Yeah, Monday. I think it was Monday.
Was it Monday?
Yeah, it was Monday evening.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but a shooter, walked into a supermarket and killed, I believe it was 10 people. Mm-hmm. It was very sad. But, you kind of saw within hours kind of everyone sort of flocked straight from this is sad to here's my position that I already held and I'm not going to move from it. And you kind of saw that with Joe Biden, who gave a White House address yesterday. And he basically, admitted we don't know all of the facts. We don't know the motive. We don't know a lot of details about this. But he said, and I quote, I want to be very clear. This is the one thing I do know enough to say on in terms of what happened here. While we're still waiting for more information regarding the shooter, and then I'll skip ahead to a little bit. I don't need to wait another minute, let alone an hour, to take common sense steps that will save the lives in the future and to urge my colleagues in the House and Senate to vote. We can ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines in this country once again. So, Biden is saying he wants to ban assault weapons, which is kind of an overly vague term that Democrats use.
Yeah.
I think to conjure up images of scary SWAT teams
and
military-style
machine guns,
weapons and machine guns. We know that's what they consider assault weapons are not that. You know,
No.
Right. Any weapon can be used to assault.
Yeah, that's the point of a weapon. You
Right.
can
Defending yourself.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I think, Democrats are calling for two things right now. They're calling for expanded background checks, universal mandatory background checks, and an assault weapons, in quotes, ban. For one thing, though, none of these things, first off, neither of these things would have stopped this shooting. And I think that's really important to point out while paying respect to the victims and to say, look, this wouldn't just, you have to be honest and you have to say, look, these measures, you're saying they're common sense. You're saying they could have stopped the shooting, but they wouldn't have. The alleged shooter in this case did not have any psychiatric court holds. He appeared to have some mental illnesses, but he didn't have anything on his record that would have prevented him from buying a gun. There was a record of the gun sale that was sort of referenced on the police affidavit, suggesting that he did have to pass a background check first. But then, we're also calling for an assault weapons ban. And it sounds like this guy may have had a gun that would count under one of the weapons that would count under, I'm explaining this badly, but it sounds like he would have had a weapon that Biden wants to ban, right?
Okay. Sure.
The problem is that the way that these assault weapons bans are phrased wouldn't have stopped this guy from buying a gun. If this guy wanted to walk into a supermarket and murder people, he would have bought it, because sort of the problem is, and I'm going to reference a bill that's been proposed by Dianne Feinstein, who authored the last so-called assault weapons ban that lasted she authored it in 1994 and expired in 2004.
Is that the one that was a complete and utter failure?
That's the one. That is indeed the one. Biden hasn't expressed support yet for her new and updated version of it, but he has, expressed support generally for this sort of ban.
Okay.
And, this thing that Feinstein supports, and it was the issue with the last ban as well, it goes after issues like, it defines assault weapons based on things like having a forward grip or a folding or telescoping stock, a barrel shroud, a threaded barrel, a pistol grip.
What?
None of these things, the capacity to accept a detached magazine, all of these things may very well be characteristics of what we would call an AR-style weapon that Democrats want to ban, but they don't make a weapon more dangerous. They don't have anything to do with ammo size or rate of fire or any of that stuff. They don't make a weapon kill people more. They just are sort of these arbitrary things. Let's say we had banned AR-15 weapons. If a guy wants to murder people, he's going to walk into a store and then buy an equally dangerous gun that's just not an AR-15, and then he's going to use it to kill people. If someone's bent on murder, that's what they're going to do. It's just this ridiculous leap of logic to say, well, we're going to ban AR-15s or AR-15 style weapons, but kind of an equally deadly weapon we're not going to ban, and you can still buy that. But that's going to help stop mass killings. What's the thinking here?
Well, something that's important to note, and you kind of touched on this, Joe, the ammo that's used in your hunting rifle is the same ammo that goes into an AR-15.
Yeah.
It's just a different type of weapon. So someone could just walk in, buy a hunting rifle, and hunting rifles are also single shot, just like an AR-15 is.
Or do they-
if it's a
are
bolt
hunting rifles
action,
bolt
you got,
action?
but
So
still,
there's-
it's still a single shot. It's not like AR. You just hold down. Obviously, you don't have to do
Right.
the bolt, but still, it's the same type of weapon. You could still shoot people
You
with
can
it
still
if you
take
wanted
a
to.
lot of lives
You could
with it if
buy
you
a
want to.
shotgun.
Yeah.
And I did check this before the show. Most mass shootings are committed with handguns. It's just that I don't think Democrats have spent any time around guns. I don't think they have any clue what guns look like, how guns work, how they shoot, the ammo that goes inside guns. It's just essentially, let's ban whatever gun looks the scariest.
Yes, and that's the thing. It looks scary, let's get rid of it.
Yeah, it's the social justice warrior mindset. It's, oh, we banned this scary gun. Look at us. Look at how great we are.
Yeah.
It does nothing practical.
What are your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats have been after guns for years and years and years now. I'm sadly the old guy on this panel, so even when I was a kid, I remember kind of Democrats going after guns, or and The bizarre thing to me is that Democrats and the left have absolutely convinced themselves that the inanimate tool is the problem, not the living, breathing person using said tool in whatever manner they haven't, figured out in their heads. So I can't say I'm surprised that this is, every time there's a shooting in this country, this is going to get brought back up.
Right. Like clockwork.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, as soon as we heard the news, like you said, I think Monday afternoon, like the three of us could have easily predicted what this week's news cycle was going to look like. Like easily could have predicted that. As far as Democrats, what they're thinking behind it is that they've just convinced themselves that the tool, and it does come from, I think, a place of faithlessness for Democrats. It's not, to them, the physical earthly tool is the be all end all. It has nothing to do with the spirituality of the person who's may have, committed an atrocious act. It has nothing to do with the mental well-being of the person who committed the atrocious act. It is, as far as Democrats are concerned, somehow the gun itself is what they have no concern about solving issues like, why did this guy do this? Yeah. Was he just mentally ill? Was he? I mean, I don't want to speculate, but I've seen so many things out there on the internet about what his motive could have been. But I don't want to,
And I think that's also part of the problem. I mean, we saw, just to kind of take a step back, we saw some conservatives, saying ISIS, and there has not been any legitimate evidence so far that points to that. But I think people go into their preferred narratives when something like this happens.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to ask you guys, like, what is the solution to this kind of stuff? Because I don't want to make it seem like, we don't care about the people who died in this problem that very evidently, an issue. If somebody is walking into a supermarket and gunning people down, that's a problem.
Yes.
So what is the problem and what is the solution, Joey?
So I think something, and I think this is the most important thing to remember when we start to have this debate. Because if you remember this, it takes away a lot of the knee-jerk reactions. You cannot legislate the evil out of someone's heart. If someone is evil or mentally ill, not saying you're evil if you're mentally ill, but if you're one of the two, you cannot stop that person from committing a heinous crime through a law. You just can't. It's like drunk driving laws. Yes, of course we have them, but if that person you can't stop that person from getting into a car drunk and crashing into someone. You can have laws that are supposed to stop it, but that person made that decision to do that and committed the crime. It's the same thing with the gun debate. The other thing we need to take out of it is the race debate. It doesn't matter if this guy was white. It doesn't matter if this guy was black, if this guy is Muslim or Syrian born. What matters is what drove this guy to do it. We need to look at the root cause of these problems, not these things on the surface that don't matter. And remember, Colorado has universal background checks, some of the strictest gun laws in America, and they didn't stop this guy from committing the crime.
And I think
and I believe the alleged shooter's brother said he had some mental health issues.
Antisocial.
And that is and so my guess that he felt like he was mocked for being Muslim as a kid. And so my guess is just me speculating, it's probably going to be another mental health situation because so many of these shooters struggle with mental health. And so I think this is somewhere that Republicans have failed too. We have not spent enough time addressing the mental health issue and what we do to solve mental health in America, because there's a crisis.
Yeah, there is.
There's a mental health crisis,
and it's
in
not
America.
Something I think that often we don't talk about it because it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about.
Sure.
But it's not. You shouldn't be ashamed to say, I have mental health issues. People are open about that. I really, really respect people when they are open about it. The more you talk about it, the more I think that you can kind of prevent stuff like this from coming to a head, because people realize, look, we live in a messed up world sometimes,
and a broken world.
All of us have things that go on in our minds. Sometimes it's worse than others, and we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
People who need help should be encouraged to get help.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be stigmatized at all. The one other thing I'll say about this shooting is I think that the left and a lot of people in America like to pretend that evil isn't a thing. And evil is a thing.
So true.
Mm-hmm.
What happened 2 days ago was evil.
Yes.
No doubt about it.
Evil.
And evil will be with us until I think Jesus comes back.
Yeah.
Right? We will have... We live in a fallen world, and there's no kind of getting around that. But there is an answer. The answer is the gospel.
Absolutely.
The goodness of Jesus and the righteousness of Jesus can kind of help people who don't have that. It can, he took on our sins for other people, not to preach, but, there's good news. There's good news in the face of this evil, and I think America needs to turn back to that good news and realize that there's help, there's an answer, there's a way to get less evil, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I will say that I do think there is one sort of actionable thing that our viewers can do, any of our readers can do, and it's just get involved in your local community, vote,
so true.
because a lot of these Democrats who want to take away your guns were voted in. This is not an oligarchy, or they weren't just given this position.
Absolutely.
They won an election. They were voted in.
The more local the election, the more it affects you.
Yes,
so true.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the sad thing, right? Is we're as guilty about as anyone, just because local elections, it's sometimes hard to generate tons of interest in them.
Sure.
But the general election, it's big. It's the main event, and then local elections don't get it. But like you said, Joe, you're 100% right. They are so important, especially because Joe, you actually made me think of this when you were talking about how the most mass shootings are committed with pistols.
Yeah.
That's probably the next gun they're going to try and take. They're
Absolutely.
going to ban the assault weapons.
Yes.
There's going to be another shooting like, oh, this ban wasn't strong enough. And then the next one, which is why it's so important for everyone to vote.
Yeah.
Make sure you get representatives and local leaders who share your values.
Yeah.
That's probably, that's one very tangible thing everyone can do to combat this.
And I'll also say banning things just is proven not to work. I'm a libertarian. I'm anti the government banning most things.
Oh boy.
But I think in general, you can say that when you ban a lot of things, that doesn't mean the problem's going away. It just means people do it more illegally.
Look at prohibition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great
Prohibition
point.
didn't stop
Yeah.
alcohol, just
Nope.
helped foment the rise of organized crime. We're running out of time on this segment.
Yeah.
And I'm going to move on to Brian
Yeah,
because you have some really good stuff to tell
All
us.
right. So I'm going to go ahead and start my segment by just full disclosure. I am an Asian American who was born in the Pacific Islands. So I'd like to think of myself an expert on this. So Democratic Senators Tammy Duckworth of Illinois and Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, they both basically came out and said that they're okay being racist. It is one of the more bizarre things I've seen. Yeah. So Duckworth, who is a veteran, she is of Thai ancestry.
Okay.
On Tuesday, so yesterday, she basically told reporters that she has not been super thrilled with Biden's cabinet picks thus far. If you'll remember, Biden came into this saying, "Oh, we're going to have the most diverse cabinet in history," and apparently it hasn't been the most diverse cabinet in history. And so I have a quote here from Tammy Duckworth. There's no AAPI representation in the cabinet, Duckworth said. There's not a single AAPI in a cabinet position. That's unacceptable. We were actually just talking about this in the green room before the show began, but I want to make it very clear that AAPI, not a thing. As a literal Asian American born in the Pacific Islands, I have not once heard the acronym AAPI until today. It is dumb. It is not a thing. Please stop using it. So,
And that's the show.
so that was Tammy Duckworth, and then Mazie Hirono basically echoed similar sentiments.
I can't stand her.
Yeah, she comes from a great state, but
Yeah,
alas.
yeah.
I have a lot of respect for Tammy Duckworth, I think, as a veteran.
Yeah.
Right,
Double
yeah.
amputee. I think she's
Yeah.
a double amputee,
think
right?
she is,
I don't
yeah.
have very much respect for Mazie Hirono.
No.
So yeah, and again, so like I said, Hirono basically follows the same idea, and the two of them basically came out and said that they were planning. They've kind of walked back the statement since, but
Okay.
they both essentially came out and said we're only going to confirm cabinet members that are LGBTQAI plus ABCDEFG or Asian or a minority. So, and it just when I saw this story, it blew my mind. One, obviously, I'm Asian, so this is going to catch my eye.
Yeah.
But like, hey, maybe I could get into the cabinet.
Hey, yeah, there you go.
Nah, Joe would never. Joe Biden would never.
I think you would do a
nominate me.
great job as Secretary of State.
Yeah,
even though we already have
yeah.
one.
I could probably do some good work
Better
there.
than him. Than
So, anywho, so you have these two, fairly prominent Democratic senators essentially saying that race is a deciding factor in a cabinet pick. So my first question, Joe, I'll kick it over to you first. Why do you think the left and Democrats, do they not realize that this rhetoric is literally racist? The idea of, judging someone based on the color of their skin is literally racist.
No, I don't think they do. I think there's something to be said for diversity, right? Diversity is good.
Yeah,
We're,
sure.
America has many cultures in it, and I think what they don't understand is that when you actually say you can only pick, one of these, someone from this pool, one, it's offensive to that pool because you're basically saying, well, we just, we're gonna throw you this bone because we couldn't, we don't really want to say you're qualified out of everyone, but we'll pick it from you. It's like when Joe Biden picked Harris as his vice president.
Yeah,
he said beforehand, I'm gonna only pick a woman. Or
I thought it was a black woman.
No, I think it was a woman.
Okay.
He said he might want to pick a black woman.
Oh, okay.
But it's like it's kind of offensive because you're saying, we're not going to judge you on your merits. We're going to judge you first on this thing that you can't control, and then we'll judge you, maybe on your merits.
It's incredibly patronizing.
I don't, it's very patronizing. It's kind of the opposite. It has the opposite effect, I think, that they're going for, right?
Yep.
And no, they don't realize that.
I think this reflects an overall difference in worldview between conservatives and liberals. Conservatives subscribe to the idea of out of many, one, e pluribus unum. And Democrats, liberals, subscribe to the worldview of America of divide and conquer. And that's the key difference here. I think conservatives 100% believe in diversity because they believe we are one nation, all the people in it, no matter what your race is, no matter where you come from, you are capable of achieving whatever you want based on your merit.
You should be
and
motivational
you
speaker.
as a human being. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. It's the American dream.
The American dream. That's what conservatives believe in. And that's what we see people like in Trump's cabinet, Ben Carson. Ben Carson wasn't in Trump's cabinet because of his race. He was there because he was an incredibly accomplished neurosurgeon who led a spectacular life.
And Elaine Chao.
And Elaine Chao, yeah. And that wasn't a factor, I think, that Trump took into account. He took into account these people's accomplishments and who they were as human beings. The Democrats don't care. They want to divide Americans into boxes, into sectors based on race and gender and nationality. That's what they care about. They want to divide America and pit different classes and groups against each other so that they can conquer.
And have a hierarchy.
Yeah. And that's what we're seeing in the Senate. I mean, this is blatant racism. I mean, imagine if this was flipped. Imagine if Ted Cruz said, I am not voting for a Trump nominee unless they're white. Could you imagine? That would be horrifically racist.
Yeah.
And it's no different here. Racism doesn't change just based on the race that it's against. Racism is racism no matter what race it's against. And it's important to remember that right now.
And you guys both bring up a good point that I do want to touch on before we sign off for the day.
Sure.
So, not to end on a kind of a dour note, but, conservatives have been losing the cultural war with the left.
Yeah.
That's just fact, unfortunately. So when you see stuff like this, especially, I was on paternity when this happened, so I wasn't in the newsroom, but I was, when all the hashtag Stop Asian Hate stuff started, I'm just sitting in my house like, what is this? What is going on? So like, what's something we can do? How do we fight back in this scenario? Because at the end of the day, this is a tough one for conservatives because it's so much easier to tell someone, you're a victim, you deserve this, you get all this free stuff, as opposed to telling them, you got this, suck it up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So like, what do we do? How do we fight this cultural war that we've been losing for years and years and years now?
Joe, what do you think?
I think that we have to make it clear that we care about these communities. And
Yes.
I think that we have to make it clear that, look, there is Asian hate in the world, right? We've reported on it. We've reported on, Ivy League universities using certain admissions criteria that discriminates against Asian people, right? We know that racism against certain groups exists.
Yes.
And we have to kind of not identify, but we have to empathize with these communities who feel like they have been hurt. But we have to sort of hear them, and we know that, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think the Asian community thinks that what will help them is having an Asian cabinet secretary. I think the solutions to these problems are more bottom up than top down, right? It's about local stuff. It's about what you said, Brian, earlier about getting involved in communities. It's about stuff that it's about listening first off, but it's about not one size fits all type of things, because we know that one size fits all just doesn't work. We know that community happens at the local level. So we have to listen and talk. And I know that's a general cliche answer, but I think that stuff at the top just is not going to help these issues.
That's a good point.
One thing, there's many things I think Trump did that were really good things. One thing specifically that I think was great was Trump's America First message. I think that appealed to minority groups in America, this message of America First and America Greatness, and bringing back the idea of the American dream and telling these groups, look, you live in America. You can be whatever you want. Your skin color doesn't matter. Where you came from doesn't matter. What matters is you're an American, you have this American identity, and you can accomplish whatever you want. And that message seemed to have worked. Trump did really well with Hispanics, and he made grounds with the African-American community. And I think, speaking at a local level, I think things like opportunity zones, for example, that Trump helped push, where we can help out and listen to these communities and their needs without saying, what the left does, we don't think you're good enough, so you need a handout from us. And I think we need to expose that and offer them a counter solution of essentially, you are capable of this.
You are good enough.
You are good enough.
I think leaving it alone and just calling it a day isn't good enough.
No, it's not.
We're not going to saying, this is wrong, just kind of figure it out. And that's not what you're saying. I think that is the first step, and it's not going to. Doing just that will make things worse.
I think too, it would be, and we saw this with Trump, leaders within, like people like Brandon Tatum or Vernon Jones, people who have left the what they call the Democratic plantation, moved over to the right, but they have connections to these communities where they can help message and say, look, I left, and here's why you should too. So I think more people like that are going to become critical in the future in sharing our message with communities that conservatives have traditionally struggled with.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I will end this. One more last reminder. Please stop using AAPI. That's all I have. That's the one thing I want you to take away from my segment. Stop using that stupid acronym.
Well, today has been a really fun show. Some great topics discussed. I just want to thank you all so much for joining us on WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. If you are on YouTube right now watching us, please, before we sign off, hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you get notified every time that we go live on the show. Just a reminder that our schedule has changed. We are no longer on 5 days a week. We are coming to you live on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern Time. If you are listening on an audio platform right now, please go to YouTube at youtube.com/WJ Live to subscribe there so you can see our wonderful faces. And if you want to support us at an even greater level, please go to westernjournal.com/join. That is where you can find some exclusive content and get in touch better with us. We will see you back here on Friday. Thank you so much.